Very quickly I could see the potential, because the scenes were just so unique. I've never seen anything like it. You see, everyone's seen propaganda films produced by Al Qaeda and ISIS and so on the internet, but I've never seen footage that was as intimate as this, where basically guys were shooting behind the scenes in Al Qaeda safe houses on operations without any restraint, and we were watching the rushes in effect, and the people who were filming it weren't controlling what they were filming. They were just filming anything they fancied, and that was very privileged access, stuff that I'd never seen before, and I knew that that was something valuable. When we started translating it and you realised that the things that they were saying were very intimate, then you started to realise actually there's something important here. It's not just like, wow, look at this, they're shooting themselves, eating dinner and having a chat. No, but what they're talking about, like what it's like to be a suicide bomber or what have you, or they're behind the scenes and they're trying to G themselves up for their attack on the night before the attack and trying to talk to each other. All of that, you suddenly realised that those are intimate moments actually where you realise these were human beings, real human beings, and not just the mask that they put on for propaganda videos normally. I felt like the material was such that what was most important was to allow people access to it unmitigated by the interference, in a way, of interview material or extensive commentary. And so I made the creative decision relatively early on to try and keep the commentary to a minimum. And in fact, we don't actually talk over any of the pictures. There's just tiny bits of commentary over black between the scenes. And in those scenes, I tried to cut it so that the audience were there in the scene with the protagonist that you're seeing. Basically has two consequences. One is that it's a much more emotional experience, and I think secondly it encourages people to think more for themselves and not just to be spoon-fed answers. And some of those questions that you ask yourself are moral, human questions, not just sort of current affairs, journalistic questions. We did a book alongside the film, and we used that book as an opportunity to look a little bit more into the context. The film, we felt, was more of an opportunity to allow for the more universal human themes to be explored. I don't think you need to know a great deal about Saudi Arabia to watch the film and understand it and appreciate it. You know, we explain the context that Saudi Arabia is the land of the two holy mosques. It's the most sacred land for Muslims. And that means that the stakes are high for Al Qaeda. And that just creates an environment for the film where everything is to play for both sides. The Saudi state is determined to assert its authority and feels profoundly threatened by what Al Qaeda are trying to do. From Al Qaeda's point of view, they hope to take over the land of the two holy mosques. They hope to overthrow the monarchy and establish their own holy state, and from there expand outwards with all kinds of dreams and fantasies. There are loads of moments which are straight almost out of a comedy. When you watch the film, you laugh at the stupidity of many of the situations these kids get involved in, the ridiculousness of it, and that makes them very easy to empathise with and to relate to. And you look at these young kids and you think, oh, I knew kids like that at school. And yet they're committing these horrific acts. And on the one hand, you want to forgive them because they're young and naive, and on the other hand, you're angry with them. You're angry because they don't have enough sense of self-possession or self-awareness or humility to question why they're doing it or the consequences of what they're doing, because they're too caught up in their own desire to go to heaven and get an easy ticket to the afterlife. I think that their youth, their naivety, is part of the explanation for what they're doing. But there are, the film shows that there are other things going on as well. So it's not just that; it's the sense of camaraderie which people want when they join any organisation. Really, we all want to belong. Not all, but almost everyone wants to belong to something. They want to feel a sense of purpose. So they're desperate for that. I think they're desperate for praise, and praise is not quite the right word. They're desperate for prowess, the sense of self-respect that they get from doing something that they hope and believe will be noble and brave. And I think they're people for whom faith is such a profound part of their life that the idea of doing something that religious leaders tell them is the right thing, that they trust, seems easy. It seems a very straightforward decision to make. And I think that in the West, where faith is much more complex, or tends to be much more complex, people are more questioning of faith leaders if a faith leader tells them to do something, whereas in this culture, they're less questioning. So there are a range of causes relating to what it is that they're doing and why they do it. Obviously, there are taste boundaries. So, for instance, when we show Victims, we were very careful to reframe the shot so you never saw a victim's face, sort of to give them respect in the way we edited it. We didn't have that compunction when we showed the terrorists being killed. So there were those kind of decisions we made, but we did decide that this wasn't going to be totally sanitized, that we felt that the material demanded an honest look at what was going on. We felt when we cut it that you shouldn't make a film about terrorism in a way that wasn't disturbing. That it is part of the nature of looking at this subject that you do need to know that it is horrific. The film doesn't offer any easy answers, but I think it would be wrong for a filmmaker to try and make a film about this subject and offer easy answers. I think what it does do is uses narrative or storytelling as a way in to try and understand the nature of good and evil, the way in which young people get sucked into something that they don't quite understand and allow themselves to subjugate their consciousness to the collective will of this organisation. And that's one of the things that I was really trying to get at when we started editing the film, was to try and to capture the humanity of them without in any way apologising for what they were doing, showing the consequences of their actions, showing the innocent men, women and children that they were killing. I think the phenomena of Islamism, political Islam, Islamist terrorism, jihadism, whatever you want to call it, has become the big political movement of the 21st century. Perhaps like communism was the big movement of the 20th century, this jihadism has become the movement of the 21st century. And I think that it is important for the wider public to try and understand this phenomena, understand why people are drawn to it, if we want to understand the world in which we live. I think also when you watch the film, even if you're not interested in the subject matter of terrorism per se, the universal elements of why young people want to be part of a group, the sense of meaning that they get, and how that can overcome any moral scruples they might have, that's a kind of universal thing, I think, that anyone who watches the film will get from it, irrespective of their interest in the Muslim world or with Islam or this other kind of political phenomena. It's a universal human thing that we're looking at in the film.